The signal came quietly. It was not a roar or a flash of light, but a soft whisper carried through the stars. At first, it was so faint that most machines did not even notice it. It repeated only a few simple words in many tones, as if it was designed to be understood by anyone who could hear. The message was clear. Who will answer? Across the galaxy, great civilizations stopped what they were doing. On peaceful planets, councils gathered to talk. On worlds with tall towers and glowing skies, leaders ordered their scientists to study the strange signal. Nobody knew where it had come from or who had sent it. The words seemed too simple to be a trick, yet too bold to be ignored. Fear spread quickly. Many races had lived long enough in the galaxy to know that strangers often brought danger. Some said the signal was bait, a trap made by an old enemy waiting for foolish species to reveal themselves. Others believed it was a call for help from someone too weak to speak openly. A few even thought it was the voice of machines, not living beings at all. But in the end, most of them chose silence. Entire councils voted not to reply. They decided that, if they stayed quiet, the danger would pass them by. On many worlds, the signal was hidden in secret archives, locked away so ordinary people would never learn about it. For months, the stars stayed quiet. The signal still traveled, still repeated its words, but nobody had the courage to respond. And then, it reached Earth. On a small blue and green planet orbiting an ordinary star. Human scientists picked up the call. At first they thought it was a mistake. The sound was faint, full of static, but as they cleaned the noise and adjusted the machines, the words became clear. Who will answer? In meeting rooms and news stations, people began to argue. Some leaders gave warnings. They remembered Earth's long history of wars and mistrust, and they feared what might happen if this was truly a trap. Others laughed at the idea and said it was just natural space noise, not worth attention. But not everyone agreed. On Earth, there were always people who wanted to explore, who looked at the unknown not with fear but with curiosity. Scientists who had spent their lives watching the stars now believed this was the moment they had been waiting for. Engineers began to run tests to see if they could trace where the signal had come from. Explorers started to dream about building ships that could travel far enough to find the source. What made humans different was not their technology. It was their nature. Earth itself was a hard world. Life on the planet had always been shaped by storms, floods, earthquakes, volcanoes, predators, and endless struggles for survival. Where other beings might live only in safe places, humans had spread into deserts, mountains, ice fields, and jungles. They learned to adapt, to fight through hunger, cold, and danger. This history was in their blood. It made them bold, even reckless, compared to other species. Fear existed in them, but so did a stubborn desire to face whatever came next. As the debates on Earth grew louder, the question became clear. Would they answer? Some governments voted no. They wanted to wait, to stay hidden, just like the other civilizations had done. But outside of politics, groups of explorers and scientists continued working in secret. For them, silence was not an option. Humanity had always been curious, from the first time a sailor crossed unknown oceans, to the first rocket that left the planet. They had always chosen to step forward, even when danger was certain. Slowly, the idea spread from small labs to the wider world. News channels reported on the signal. Ordinary people discussed it in homes, schools, and cafes. Fear was there, but so was excitement. A simple message had made the entire planet look beyond itself. Finally, the decision was made. Earth would not stay silent. They prepared a reply. It was short, clear, and carried in many languages because humans had always been many voices instead of one. The words were simple, chosen with care. We hear you. We are here. When the reply was sent, no one knew what would come next. Would the stars remain silent? Would another message arrive in return? Would danger fall on them? Nobody could say. But the choice had been made. On other worlds, far across the galaxy, councils were shocked. They had waited so long, thinking everyone would stay hidden. But now someone had spoken. The humans, a species they barely knew from a dangerous planet few had studied closely. For the first time, the galaxy began to whisper a new word. Deathworlders. That was the name aliens used for humans, though. Earth itself did not yet know it. To the others, humans were strange beings who had grown strong on a world that could kill. They had expected such a species to be violent, selfish, unwilling to reach out. But instead, it was Earth that had answered a call the rest of the galaxy had been too afraid to face. The message continued to echo in the stars, but now, it was no longer alone. The silence of the galaxy had been broken, and the first step of something far larger had been taken. The aliens who had sent the signal did not yet reveal themselves. They were watching, waiting to see who had answered. And when they saw it was the Deathworlders from Earth, their quiet wonder turned into something else, an unease, mixed with curiosity. After the first reply was sent into the stars, Earth waited. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Yet there was no answer. The silence was heavy, but instead of cooling their curiosity, it only made humans more restless. They had already taken the first step, and now they wanted to see what would come next. On Earth, debates grew louder. Some leaders regretted the reply. They worried that unknown forces might now know Earth's location. What if they are stronger than us? Some asked. What if they see us as prey, or as a world to conquer? The memories of Earth's own history of wars made those fears seem real. But another voice was also rising, one that was far more stubborn. Explorers, scientists, adventurers, and even ordinary dreamers looked at the stars and felt something, stronger than fear, excitement. They believed that this was a moment no one should ignore. Humans had always wanted to know what was beyond the horizon, and now a horizon bigger than all others was calling. It was not the first time humanity had faced such doubts. Long ago, when the first sailors had set out into uncharted seas, people had told them they were foolish. Some never returned, but others discovered new lands. When the first pilots left the ground, many thought it impossible to fly. When the first astronauts launched into space, critics said it was too dangerous, too costly, too reckless. Yet every time the risk-takers had gone forward, and because of them the human story had always expanded. Now the same spirit was alive again. The words of the signal, "Who will answer?" seemed to have awoken something buried deep in the human heart. As debates continued, Earth scientists studied the signal more closely. They traced its direction, mapping the path of the waves through space. Slowly, a location began to emerge, a point near a star system not too far, by galactic standards. It was still far beyond where humans had ever traveled, but not impossible. If humanity built the right ship, they could reach it. The idea of sending a crew quickly gained strength. But who would go? That question was harder to answer than anyone expected. Governments argued about choosing only the most trained astronauts, those already skilled in piloting spacecraft. Others believed that scientists should be the first, since the mission was not just about travel but about understanding. Still others argued for soldiers, fearing that the unknown might require defense. Ordinary citizens, too, began to volunteer, claiming that this moment belonged not just to governments but to all of humanity. The list of names grew long, and so did the arguments. But no matter how much people disagreed, one fact was clear. There was no shortage of volunteers. Humans, for all their fears, were eager to step forward. The word Deathworlders had not yet reached Earth, but unknowingly, humans were already proving why that name fit them. On countless other planets, danger had made species cautious. But on Earth, danger had shaped people into survivors who were willing to risk everything to see what lay beyond. Earth itself was proof of this. It was a world where storms could wipe out entire cities, where earthquakes could split the ground, where volcanoes could bury life in fire and ash. It was a planet of deserts so dry that only the hardiest creatures could live, of frozen poles, where life had to fight against endless cold, of jungles full of predators, insects, and sickness. Any one of these places would have been enough to scare most species into hiding. But humans had not hidden. They had walked into deserts, sailed into storms, climbed into mountains, and even built homes in places where the land itself seemed to fight against them. This history shaped their thinking. When most of the galaxy would say, "It is too dangerous," humans would say, "Let us try." When others thought, "We might die," humans thought, "But what if we succeed?" That way of thinking, born from Earth's long struggle, now became the fuel for the mission. Plans began to take shape. Engineers designed new ships that could travel farther than ever before. Medical teams studied how long humans could survive in deep space. Scientists worked on translators, trying to guess how to speak with whoever had sent the call. Each group faced problems, but each problem only seemed to make them more determined. In the middle of all this, a strange feeling began to spread across the planet. A sense of unity. Humanity was often divided by borders, politics, and old arguments, but now, for the first time in a long time, the whole planet was looking in the same direction. The unknown beyond the stars had become a common dream. Children in schools drew pictures of starships and aliens. News stations followed every update about the mission. People in cities stayed up at night to watch the sky, hoping to see something move in the darkness. The signal, though simple, had changed the way people saw themselves. Finally, after months of preparation, the first crew was chosen. They were not the strongest or the most powerful, but they were the ones who had shown the most courage, skill, and determination. They were scientists, explorers, engineers, and pilots, men and women willing to risk their lives for something greater than themselves. When their names were announced, the world celebrated. Streets filled with cheering crowds, songs were written, and messages of hope were sent to the crew. They were not just carrying the flag of one nation, but of the entire Earth. The launch day was set. As the ship was prepared, humanity held its breath. The crew knew that the mission could fail, that they might never return. But when asked why they were still willing to go, one of them answered simply, "Because we must. We cannot ignore the stars." At last the ship was ready. Engines roared, fire lit the sky, and humanity's boldest dream lifted from the Earth. The crowd below shouted, cried, and waved as the ship climbed higher and higher until it disappeared into the darkness above. And somewhere, far across the galaxy, unseen eyes watched. The ones who had sent the signal had been waiting. They did not know who would answer. They did not know what kind of beings would dare to step forward. The ship carried the human crew farther than any of their kind had ever traveled. As Earth slowly shrank behind them into a tiny blue dot, they felt both small and powerful at the same time. They were leaving behind everything they had ever known, yet they were also carrying with them the hope of an entire world. The journey was long. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Inside the ship, the crew lived in close quarters. They worked, ate, slept, and dreamed among the hum of machines and the endless darkness outside the windows. Sometimes they stared out at the stars for hours, wondering if someone was out there watching them. Other times they kept busy with tasks, fixing equipment or running tests to keep their minds sharp. Loneliness touched them all, but it was balanced by a deep excitement. They knew they were part of something no one had done before. Every second of their journey would be remembered in history. Then one day something happened. As they reached the star system that scientists on Earth had mapped, from the signal their scanners lit up. The machines showed movement, ships not of human design. The crew gathered at the windows, hearts racing. Out of the dark came shapes, smooth and glowing with strange lights. Alien ships. They moved with a grace no human craft could match, silent and fast, circling the human vessel as if studying it. For a moment, no one spoke. Humanity had imagined this moment for centuries, first contact, and now it was real. The alien ships signaled, beams of light flashing in patterns. The humans quickly worked to decode the message. The translator machines, which had been built for this very purpose, began to hum. The lights formed into words the humans could understand. "You have answered. Step forward." The crew felt a rush of pride. They had proven their courage simply by arriving. Carefully, they followed the alien vessels deeper into the star system, toward a massive station floating between two planets. The station was enormous, far larger than anything humans had ever built. It glowed like a small city in space, with towers and domes linked together by bright bridges of light. Around it, more alien ships moved with calm precision. When the human ship docked, the crew prepared to step out. Their hearts pounded. They wore specially designed suits to keep them safe. But the true protection they carried was their determination. Humanity's story rested on their shoulders. The doors opened, and for the first time, humans walked into a place built by another species. The air was different, carrying a strange sweetness. The walls shone with colors that shifted like water. And waiting for them were the aliens. The aliens came in many forms. Some were tall and thin with long arms that moved like ribbons. Others were shorter, with large eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. A few had wings folded behind them, while others glided on smooth limbs that seemed to bend in ways no human body could. At first, the humans were shocked. They had prepared for strange appearances, but nothing could have truly readied them for the sight of living beings from other worlds. Yet what stood out most was not fear but wonder. The aliens, too, seemed surprised. Humans looked fragile compared to them. Soft skin, rounded faces, no claws, no scales, no glowing marks. But the aliens also noticed something in the humans' eyes, a light, a sharpness, a kind of fire they had rarely seen. The first exchanges were cautious. The translators worked hard to turn clicks, tones, and pulses into words. Misunderstandings happened, but patience carried them forward. Slowly, both sides began to share who they were. The aliens revealed that the signal had been a test. They had sent it to the galaxy, not knowing who would respond. Most species had chosen silence, but the humans, born of a dangerous world, had dared to come. To prove their worthiness, trials were arranged. These were not battles, but challenges meant to show endurance, intelligence, and resilience. The first trial was a test of survival. The humans were placed in an environment that shifted rapidly, heat rising, air thinning, sudden darkness. Many species had failed such conditions before, retreating in panic. The human crew, however, adapted quickly. They rationed their oxygen, adjusted their suits, encouraged each other, and pressed forward. What others saw as impossible, the humans saw as another obstacle to be overcome. The second trial was a test of cooperation. Humans were paired with alien groups to solve complex puzzles that required trust. Where other species often struggled with pride or fear of outsiders, humans showed a unique skill. They listened, laughed, and encouraged. They turned strangers into partners, bridging differences with ease. The third trial was a test of endurance. Long hours of physical and mental strain pushed the humans close to their limits. Muscles burned, eyes grew heavy, and exhaustion clawed at their bodies. Yet just as they had done on Earth for centuries, they refused to quit. They pushed through pain, reminding each other of the mission, reminding themselves of the dream. When the trials ended, the aliens watched in silence. They had expected strength, but not this kind of strength. They had expected cleverness, but not this kind of cleverness. What they saw in humans was something harder to define, an unbreakable spirit. One alien council member whispered to another, "They should not have survived that." And yet, the humans had. The galaxy had been shaken. These fragile-looking beings, from a violent world, had stepped into the stars and proven that they could not be broken. For the first time, the humans stood before the alien council, no longer just visitors, but participants. They were greeted not with suspicion, but with respect. The aliens realized something important that day. The Deathworlders were different. They were not the strongest, not the smartest, not the most advanced. But they were the ones who would always stand up again, no matter how many times they were knocked down. The humans smiled, shook hands, and laughed with their new companions. They did not fully understand how much they had already changed the galaxy. But the aliens knew. They had never seen anything like humanity before. The first contact was complete. The galaxy was no longer the same. The humans had passed the trials, but the journey was not over. The Alien Council, a gathering of leaders from many worlds, had not called them only to test their strength. There was something deeper hidden behind. The signal, something the galaxy had kept secret for a long time. When the trials ended, the council chambers filled with quiet voices. Some aliens spoke with excitement, others with unease. The humans were invited to stand before them once again. The chamber itself was like nothing they had ever seen, a vast hall floating in space, with walls that shimmered like liquid glass. Dozens of alien leaders sat in curved seats, their faces glowing under soft lights. One of the eldest council members rose. His body was thin, his skin stretched like silver cloth, and his eyes shone with a pale glow. He spoke slowly, and the translators turned his voice into words the humans could understand. "The signal you answered," he said, "was not only a call, it was a question of trust. For centuries, we have searched for guardians, beings willing to stand when others step back. Many worlds heard our call. Most chose to silence. But you from the world called Earth came forward. Do you know what this means?" The human crew looked at each other. They did not know what to say. They had thought the trials were the end, the proof that they could join the wider galaxy. But now they realized it had only been the beginning. The council member continued, "Our galaxy is not peaceful. There are storms that threaten us all. Storms not of weather, but of fear, greed, and darkness. Many races are too afraid to face them. We needed a species that could endure, that would not run. We sent the call to find such a people. And you have shown yourselves." The chamber grew still. The humans felt the weight of those words settle on their shoulders. Guardians. Protectors. It sounded too large for them, too heavy. They were only explorers, scientists, people who had stepped forward out of curiosity and hope. Could they truly hold such responsibility? One of the human crew stepped forward. He was not the captain, not even the oldest among them, but his voice carried calm strength. "We did not come here because we are strong," he said. "We came because we could not ignore the call. If the galaxy needs those who will not turn away, then perhaps we are ready to try." A wave of soft murmurs spread through the alien council. Many of them looked at the humans with new respect. For them, courage usually meant power or weapons. But here stood beings who admitted they were not the strongest, yet still chose to carry the burden. To prove their worth further, the humans shared their history. They spoke of Earth, not as a perfect world, but as a hard one. They told stories of deserts where water was rare, of mountains where the air was thin, of oceans that swallowed ships, of forests filled with dangers. They explained how again and again humans had struggled not only against nature but also against themselves. Wars, hunger, disasters, all had tried to break them. Yet every time, humanity had risen again. The aliens listened in silence. Some of them shifted uncomfortably. Their own worlds were soft compared to what these Deathworlders described. To them, the idea of living on Earth sounded almost impossible. Yet here stood a people who had not only survived such a place but had thrived, building cities, discovering science, and now stepping into the stars. One alien leader leaned forward, her skin glowing like deep emerald stone. "You are not like us," she said. "We avoid danger, we hide from storms, but your world is the storm, and still you endure. Why do you not fear?" A human answered with a small smile. "We do fear, but fear is not the end for us. It is only the beginning. It pushes us to move, to learn, to survive. Without fear, there is no courage." The council grew quiet again. Slowly, many of the leaders began to nod. The humans had revealed something deeper than strength. They had revealed their way of seeing the world. From that day, whispers spread among the council halls. Some aliens feared what the Deathworlders might become if given too much power. Others believed the galaxy had finally found what it needed, a species willing to face danger head-on. The trials had tested their bodies and minds, but this new test was one of spirit. Could humans be trusted not only to survive, but to protect others who could not? The humans themselves felt torn. They had never set out to be guardians. They were explorers, not warriors. But when they thought of Earth, of the generations who had fought to survive storms, hunger, and endless challenges. They realized that protecting others was already part of who they were. One night, while resting in the chambers prepared for them, the crew sat together and spoke quietly. They remembered the faces of the people back home, the cheering crowds, the children who had drawn pictures of ships and stars, the voices that had said, "Go for us." They knew that their journey was not only for themselves but for all of Earth. "We cannot step back now," the captain finally said. "The galaxy called and we answered. If they ask us to stand, then we must stand." The next morning, when the humans faced the council again, they did not hesitate. "We accept," they said simply. "We will stand where others step back." The council chambers filled with light. It was the sign of approval, a rare honor among the gathered worlds. The aliens began to whisper the same words again and again. Deathworlders. But this time, the word carried not only fear, it carried respect. The humans had proven something no test could measure. They had shown that trust was not about strength alone. It was about will, about choosing to face the storm instead of running from it. The council recorded their choice that day. The Deathworlders from Earth were no longer outsiders. They had become a part of the galaxy's story. The trials of trust were over. But the true test, the one that would shape the future of countless worlds, was still to come. For the first time in history, humanity had been trusted with the galaxy's hope. With the council's trust secured, the human crew felt a mixture of pride, awe, and responsibility. They had not expected this. They had stepped into the stars thinking their mission was only to explore and answer a signal, but now they had become part of something far greater. Humanity had been invited into the galaxy not as observers but as participants, guardians in a universe that had long been too cautious to act. As they looked out from the station, the humans realized how small Earth really was. The planet they had called home, with all its storms and mountains, deserts and oceans, was only a tiny part of a vast living galaxy. And yet, it had shaped them into the species that could now stand in the halls of the Interstellar Council, speaking and acting with purpose. The aliens continued to show them how the galaxy had grown silent with caution. Many worlds were too afraid to take risks. Many civilizations had lost hope. But humans, shaped by a harsh planet and a history of struggle, had done the unexpected. They had stepped forward when others stayed hidden. That courage was not built on power or weapons, but on something deeper, a spirit that refused to surrender to fear. The humans began to explore the station and the surrounding system. They met beings from countless worlds, each with unique appearances, cultures, and technologies. Some were curious, some skeptical, and some openly admiring. The humans quickly learned that survival alone would not be enough in this galaxy. Cooperation, understanding, and the ability to adapt were just as important. They worked alongside alien scientists, sharing knowledge from Earth and learning from the experiences of countless other worlds. Humans taught them about the ways Earthlings had survived deadly storms, harsh deserts, and freezing poles. They spoke of creativity, teamwork, and perseverance. Slowly, the aliens began to see patterns they had never noticed before. The Deathworlders did not simply endure. They learned, adapted, and grew stronger from every challenge. The human crew was also sent on missions to distant systems, sometimes traveling in small groups, other times accompanied by alien allies. They explored worlds that no one else dared to enter, planets with extreme climates, dangerous terrains, and unpredictable life forms. Where others might have retreated, humans stepped forward. They learned to live in harmony with harsh environments, just as they had on Earth. Each successful mission strengthened their reputation. The once cautious galaxy began to speak of the humans not as fragile beings, but as examples of courage and determination. They were called the Deathworlders because their planet had been deadly, but they had turned that death into life, fear into bravery, and weakness into strength. Back on Earth, people followed every report with amazement. They celebrated not only the success of the crew, but also the idea that humans were becoming part of a larger community in the stars. Children dreamed of one day traveling among the planets. Scientists pushed for faster ships, and ordinary citizens felt a new sense of pride. Humanity had answered the call, and now they were helping to shape the galaxy's future. The aliens, too, changed their thinking. They had once relied on caution above all else, avoiding risks and clinging to safety. But humans had shown them that sometimes stepping forward is stronger than hiding. Some worlds began to send their own explorers to join human missions, hoping to learn from their courage and adaptability. Over time, the humans worked with the Council to create a network of communication and protection that spanned many star systems. They helped planets in crisis, mediated conflicts, and shared strategies for survival in extreme conditions. Their approach was always different from the cautious methods of other species. They acted decisively, often improvising, but always learning from every mistake. Their boldness became a model for others who had long been paralyzed by fear.